officially, Gracey, welcome. Welcome to SLJ Day of Dialogue. We're so excited to have you here talking about Lala's words to folks who are joining us live or joining us in on-demand viewing. Welcome. We're so excited to share Gracey's phenomenal talents with you. She is now a Brooklyn resident and really knows the New York summer experience and the love and caregiving that goes into the storyline of Lala's words. So, Gracey, I'm going to turn it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Emily. And hi, everyone. My name is Gracey Zhang. I am the author and illustrator of Lala's words. I am originally from Vancouver, Canada. I grew up in a suburb of Coquitlam, but I now reside in New York. So briefly, Lala's words is about how the power of speaking has the ability to soften our lived experience. But to explain a little bit more in depth about Lala, I think I need to talk a little bit about my mother, who was the direct inspiration for Lala's words. So my mother was the oldest, or is the oldest, of 5 sisters and 1 brother. She was originally from Taiwan, and where she immigrated to Japan in her late 20s to pursue higher education. And then she immigrated from Japan to Canada to raise a family. And so growing up in Canada with my family, I always felt that communication was more a means to an end. I think for a lot of immigrant families, there's a few barriers when it comes to language. There's the very immediate language barrier, so that you can never really fully know your parents or your parents know you in your own native tongue. But there's also a sort of, I would say, cultural divide, because culture informs so much of how we speak to each other. And so growing up like this, it was always something that I noticed, that my family, or my mother, I should say, didn't really talk to us in the same way I noticed other mothers speaking to their kids. Me and my younger siblings would talk about this a lot in our childhood, like, how come mom never asked us, like, how's our day? You know, speaking was to get things done. So you're told what to do, when to do it, and then you do it. And growing up like this, you take the world you grew up in for granted and you accept it. And so one grows up, they move away, they go to college, and you live your own life as an adult, or so I thought. So after school and after living in New York for a while, there was a period where I did have to move back to Vancouver, Canada, and be with my family. And there was one particular year where communication was extremely tense, and sort of all the things you pick up with you as an adult, all those ways of being, understanding, they're kind of blown away. And I think it's so funny talking about this now, because I know so many people who have moved back to live with their families during the pandemic. And I think a lot of people can kind of relate to kind of reverting to their own childhood selves. And suddenly you're yelling at your mom's yelling at you, and it's crazy. But this particularly tense year was quite stressful, because there was no speaking. Conversations could not happen without things being triggered into an escalation. There was a lot of emotional yelling. Overall, it was not great, but it didn't come out of nowhere. It was a way of speaking I had noticed that was a pattern, a generational pattern. And I could identify it, but I had trouble vocalizing it, especially when you're unable to talk to the person who you should be most vulnerable with. And so I was thinking about ways that I could bring this up to my mother. And instead of sitting down and having a conversation with her, I thought the easiest way to kind of share my feelings was to write a book and have it published and to be able to put it in front of her. And so that was how the seed was planted for Lala's Words. And so Lala is a young girl who lives with her mother in the city, and she's able to express things from her heart with softness and gentleness and kindness in a relationship where that isn't valued yet. And so in the book, hopefully, something kind of takes Lala's mother outside of seeing Lala as just her child, but as her own person, capable and with abilities. Yeah, I was a little facetious saying things about my mother, but I also decided a picture book was sort of the best way to share these feelings, because I think bedtime stories or the ritual of having a parent or adult read to you is so valuable. I grew up the oldest of three, and typically oldest kids are sort of the guinea pigs in the family. And I was, but I also had the silver lining of having more of my mother's time and having her read to me. So I had many more bedtime stories read to me as a child than any of my siblings did. And so for me, Lala's Words was my way of speaking to her, not just now, but going back in time and sharing those feelings. Children's books, they have the ability to engage and entertain, but I also think they do a lot of teaching and nurturing. And so with Lala's Words, I didn't want it to just teach and nurture children, but really my aim was for it to be a reminder for myself, my mother, and all the parents out there to take that time to be really cognizant of what you're saying to your child or any child, really. So that is my introduction to Lala's Words.
Thank you so much, Gracey. It's so interesting to see where the inspiration for picture books and the stories that they tell come from, and sort of how they emerge from a thought that is specific to one that is really universal. Because I really feel like Lala's Words is one of those truly universal stories. And it's amazing that it comes from a specific experience that many of us have, experienced in some way or another, through friends, through ourselves, regardless of what side we're.
By saying me, my mother are fine. There was just one particularly there here where it was just like, ah, and a lot of like hair pulling. And I was like, how can I make her listen to me? She's not listening to me speaking, but maybe she'll read the book that I have published. So that was how it came to be.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good message and a really important one for us to keep in mind. Not just a parent-child relationship, but any kind of relationship, any type of raw sort of rubbing, conflict, to have that that moment of recognition. I wanted to open up to the audience if anybody has any questions that they want to ask. If you want to think about some of those, I think, Gracey, you'll do a brief reading.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right into it now?
In a second, I just want to say, so get prepped. But for folks who are in the audience, if you want to type your questions into the chat, you can share it to everyone or just to me, and we will get to your questions after the reading.
Great. I will start by showing you, or showing everyone, the physical book that I have. So this is Lala's Words. Dwan, the designer, did a fantastic job. I don't know if you can see it on Zoom, but there's an embossment on Lala, the title, and the leaves, whereas the paper is matte. So I'm so happy to be working with the team that I did. So yellow end papers. Lala's Words. I think for the reading, I'm actually going to do it digitally so that everyone has the full experience of the pictures. So let me start sharing my screen right now. All right, so Lala's words. Here we see Lala excitedly running outside of her home while her mother is going through her purse of receipts. I think many of you guys can relate. If not to your mother, then, well, I think we all become our mothers in our way. I never used to keep my receipts, but just watching my mother keep all of hers, I now do the same thing, even though everything is digitized now. Hot, hot, hot. The sidewalk steamed and the sun hung heavy in the sky. Everyone was still. Lala was not. Lala jumped and ran, tripped and fell. Lala was sweaty and her clothes always torn. Lala, stay still, her mother said. What child is as rough as you? Lala didn't know, but she did know she liked to go outside. Past Mr. Piatek with his radio, around the corner, down the block. Over the fence, in a patch of dirt and concrete, grew short green weeds and leaves, a place of Lala's own. Hello, hello, friends, Lala whispered. Every morning, Lala ran to her garden. Through the heat, she carried a pot of water, but it was her kind words that made the plants sway and nod. You are stripy and lovely, said Lala. Stop playing with weeds and leaves. You're covered in dirt, cried her mother. Grow strong and tall, my friends, said Lala. Be still and quiet, said her mother. You are so very special, sighed Lala. On the hottest day of summer, Lala's mother had enough. No more, Lala. No more jibber jabber in dirt and grass. Today you are staying at home. Lala cried and cried. Who would visit her little friends? I don't know if you can see, but there's a lady having a little moment with her cat in the window. So Lala stayed inside, out from the melting heat. From the window, she counted buses wheezing, listened to Mr. Piatek hum with his radio, and waved politely when Rosie passed by with their grocery bags. Throughout the day, she whispered softly, hello, hello, friends. At night, the moon rose like a bright eye. Out her window, Lala whispered to her plants, good night, my friends. I love you very much. The next morning, the sun didn't burn so strong. It was cool, 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 and breezy under a great big shade. Hector was the first to see. When he looked out his window, he whistled long and hard. Well, look at that. Lala's friends had grown strong and tall. So strong and tall, they covered Lala and her neighbors like a fountain under the sun. They had been listening every day that summer. So deeply they listened to Lala's words. They had come to find her through the warm night air. Magnificent, my magnificent friends, cried Lala. Lala ran down the stairs. Her mother was staring at the door. Oh, Lala. You are so very special. Her mother held her close and tight, and Lala felt warm inside. I love you, my amazing girl. Go out and play. And Lala did. And there you see Lala playing in the street. So I thought I would share the physical book as well as the case cover reveal. So here we have Lala in her urban world. But when you take off the jacket, It is a world of greenery and leaves and plants. A little hard to see with the lighting. So this is the front of the book. And you flip it to the back, you'll see Lala and her mother.
Gracey, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I know that this crew, our SLJ crew, is really loves seeing those kind of reveals. So it's really a special moment to share that case cover reveal with you. I love Lala and her mother on the back cover too. It just brings such a special element to it. So thank you for that reading. Hearing things in the creator's own voice always makes it come to life.
Thank you so much.
We got some good questions in. First one from Rochelle. Thank you, Rochelle. Has writing this book shown you more ways that you relate to your mother?
Oh yes, yeah. It's something I've said it before. I don't say it again. I originally wrote Lala as myself and my mother as my mom. But after writing and the process of it, it was really my mother who was Lala. And so, yeah.
That's beautiful. How so?
She's a lot, we're very similar people. And so I think sometimes you do you see the qualities in other people that you see the most in yourself. And sometimes that can result in a lot of suppressing, because you want to suppress the things you're most insecure about yourself and other people. So I think for my mother, she, as the oldest of so many siblings and having to work from a very young age, take care of her family, she had this kind of spirit and willpower that I think has been suppressed for a long time. And so I think seeing in me, she was like, oh my God. And so, but I think she's definitely living her life now. And yeah, she's the grown Lala.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that revelatory moment. Sabrina asked a question that I think goes off from what we're talking about now nicely. What was your mom's response when she saw the book for the first time?
Oh, I actually still haven't sent her a physical book. It's still, I have the only first physical copy right now, and I'll be getting some more physical copies soon. I think when I told her about the book, she was a little confused, because I think book writing isn't necessarily a traditional path. And so she was like, well, are you working for a company, or are you going door to door and selling these? Like, is this Girl Guides? So there's still a lot of like confusion behind that, but hopefully she'll enjoy it. She did see some of the pictures before they had been sent off to the press. And I think there was one illustration in particular where she was able to kind of recognize who was who immediately. It was this one with Lala and on the couch and her mother scolding her. She was like, is this you and me?
Oh my gosh. That's great. She's gonna be thrilled. Also, just send her here. Show her how much people love the book here.
She's in New York before, and she was just overwhelmed. Like, she had lived in Tokyo, and it's like, and so I think she thought she knew what a metropolitan city was, but she was in Tokyo in the 80s, and so Tokyo has urbanized more, and New York has urbanized us a lot more as well. So she was like, oh my God, with all the noise and trains. So
it's a lot. I want to turn it over. Melissa asked a really great question, and this sort of leads into a different aspect of what you do. She commented, you have a really beautiful use of color. How did you decide on the limited palette?
Oh, thank you so much. It's so funny hearing that. I think when I was in school, and I went to a school of design, and so we were all illustration majors. One of the biggest, I guess, feedback I got from students and teachers was, you only work in black and white, you don't really work in color. And I was like, because I can't use color. But for me, I felt like I wanted the city to really be like distinctly a city, and I wanted the leaves and Lala to kind of emerge out of that. And so the greenery was an obvious choice. And for yellow, I love eggs, I love the yolks, I love the heat, and I love the sun. So I wanted her to be kind of the symbol of optimism.
That's amazing. And I think it really does shine through. Somebody said while you were doing the reading, the yellow. Yeah, and the combo of yellow and green just feels like love. So I think it really speaks to me in that way. Can you talk a little bit more about your process? You know, how you how you sketch, how you work with that aspect of things.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like visual storytelling came to me first before words. Um, so I felt like I had this image of a young girl in a city from the very beginning, but I wasn't necessarily sure how it translated. So there was actually, I have a few scraps of receipt paper where there's like just scribbles on the back of it, whatever you have at the time. But for Lala's words, it was a lot of back and forth in figuring out the heart of the story and having a visual placement of that. And then the words, I sort of had to, once I had an idea of the images and I kind of spread out the story beats, the words kind of were finessed later on. Um, yeah, so it's a little bit of back and forth, trial and error.
That's so neat. And I know sometimes we have people who are different, you know, the author and the illustrator. So being somebody who can sort of synthesize all of that together, it's really fun to hear about that process. I was going to ask as well about oh, I wanted to mention that everybody should follow you on Instagram. You have great content and I just love your art so much. So folks should follow you on Instagram.
Thank you. Yeah, I post little comics there, some off the cuff drawings that aren't finished enough to go on the website portfolio. But I share also book news on there too. What's my handle? My handle is Grace and then YYZZ. In the States, it's Z. In Canada, I said Z for a lot when I first studied in the US, and there was always so much confusion. So I've practiced to say Z.
Yeah, we don't know. Sorry. I'm going to drop the link in here too. And so anybody who is here live can get that. For those of you who are watching this on demand, Gracey YZ, GRACEYYZ. So check.
I have a question actually for if there's anyone, is there anyone based in New York who's watching? Because if so, there are a couple Easter eggs in the book for those who haven't been to New York or who have just visited briefly. But all the buildings you see in the book are existing buildings in a neighborhood I used to live in called Ridgewood. So if you end up in that area, hopefully you can see some of what I used as landmarks. Here, there's one in particular that I really like, which is this theater in the back. I think it was abandoned for a while and now they've turned it into a gym. I think Blink Fitness. But yeah, the building itself is still standing.
That's amazing. That sounds about right. That sort of makes me think of Brian Selznick's Wonderstruck with the model of the city that's incorporated in just so many other wonderful New York landmarks, and it's so great to be able to pay homage to your city, to your part of the city.
Yeah, it's a little love letter to New York.
It really comes across. All right, I think we're actually just about at the end of our time. I know folks have other sessions to go to, but feel free to come back and share this once it's archived. You can share it with your patrons, with other book lovers, and check out our booth. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you soon.
Enjoy the Thursday.